I've got, Deb up the back there, and Dale sings with us, and Simon. It's a real community. Next slide. And what sort of inspired me to start community singing? The social justice stocktake, which the Salvation Army do every year. Is it every year? Yep. They survey all of Australia and they find out what are the deepest needs, what are the social justice issues that are hitting the hardest. Next slide. And you can see in that top panel, many of you would have seen these, right? Give us a wave if you've read the stocktake. Yeah, that's great. Mental health, housing affordability, alcohol, drug misuse, family violence and homelessness. I've just picked on two there that sort of touch in the space that I am pretty passionate about. Mental health. Every year, 3.2 million Australians experience anxiety-related conditions. And you can only imagine that COVID would have exacerbated all of these numbers tremendously. Nearly half of Australians experience a mental disorder, and 1 in 7 children between 4 and 17 experience mental ill health. Again, the effects of COVID have exacerbated social isolation and loneliness. 15.2% of Australians feel lonely. This is telling, isn't it? We have the love of Jesus, right? We've got something to share. We have the gold, if you like. I look at it as the gold, and people will be attracted to the gold of connection, community, sharing the love of Jesus. And you can read those other statistics there. Next slide. So why group singing? There's an increasing body of research around the highlights of participating in musical groups, the power of the arts and creativity to connect, uplift and improve mental health. The arts are a vital expression of human experience, and we've just heard about that from Shaw, haven't we? Community singing fits neatly into what we as a Salvation Army do in terms of our continuum of care and support for local communities. Next slide. So Limelight Choir is an opportunity for CORE to partner with Worship Arts in a similar way that we have partnered with CORES in the Just Brass program, which takes musical tuition into disadvantaged communities. We want to sort of facilitate a bit of an uprising of community choirs. You'll see them popping up all over the place, over social media. There's pop-up choirs, there's pub choirs. It's becoming a bit of a wave of activity here. So really Limelight Choir is a program, but more than a program, it's a collective if you do it right. It really draws on art-based community development and touches on those lenses that we're looking through for the conference to educate and inform and nurture and heal people to build community. Next slide. So you can see here, I'll probably skip over this one, but when we're engaging in communities, it's really good to have, I think, this reflective practice. When we do that research, I think Brad sort of touched on that this morning, looking at the assets in your community, looking at the assets in your faith community, and where can we partner and build those relationships? How do we maintain partnerships? How do we make connections in our community? And I'll skip on because Brad's given us a good introduction there. Here are some of the types of engagement, and some of this information is from the Arts Council Australia. So we can adapt this to a Christian faith perspective as well, I think. So there's lots of ways that we can do community engagement, and I think artistic programming is probably one where community choirs fall in. And also learning programs, creating programs for specific communities or groups to build leadership and artistic practice. We've seen this in the Just Brass program, and it can equally work as well in community singing. Next slide. So why choirs? We want to sort of have some programs on offer for adults as well as kids. And I think this is not just a reinvention of a songster brigade. This is actually singing music that the community would be listening to on the radio, and we want to provide you all of the tools, all of the mechanisms. If you're interested in starting a Limelight Choir or something similar in your context, come and speak to me. Next slide. The vision here, this is just my suggestions, is to really build healthy communities through group singing. I think it touches on one of our mission intentions, to connect creatives in the broader community in which our faith expressions are situated, and respond to human need and building trusting relationships where the love of Jesus is shared. I think it's great to have a values-based culture, and we have our Salvation Army values as well. But if you want to start a choir, here's some example values that you might want to develop with a group that you start, using the acronym Vocalist actually. Values: opportunity, connection, artistry, learning, inclusion, skills and teamwork. And I know with the choir that I started 8 years ago as a missional entrepreneurship, if you like, it's a self-funded choir by members paying fees, and that's just made it more sustainable, but obviously you could adapt this to whatever context you're serving in. Next slide. So the focus is really to create singing and performance opportunities for people, to promote connection, friendship and teamwork, and obviously to contribute to the personal, social and spiritual development of participants. And I don't think Deb would mind me saying that Deb sort of came to our faith community at Marybreck through the community choir that meets, that has our rehearsals on a Monday night there at Marybreck, and she's just found a place of belonging. She's found a place to serve. She's first there on a Sunday morning getting the percolator ready. She's first there setting up, getting the supper rosters organised. So enthusiastic, and I think it sort of talks about the assets that Brad, I think, alluded to this morning, that the people we need in our community, we haven't met yet, because we need to get out of this idea that God is only operative on 1 hour on a Sunday morning. He's active in the world around us, and as we go out of these doors at the end of the weekend, we are invited to partner with God to make something beautiful. Next slide. So it's always a good idea to have an idea of who you're wanting to target in your choir. So I'd encourage you, if you want to start any sort of group, it might be a dancing group, it might be whatever it is, have a look at the statistics in your community, see who you might want to focus or target as a potential person that you can come alongside. Next slide. So the offering that we have for Limelight Choir is basically a system where you can choose to have printed music in sort of soprano, alto, tenor, bass, or you can have high, medium, low voice formats, and provide charts, lyric sheets and demo tracks. So it makes it really accessible for anybody, your regular everyday singers that just want to come along for karaoke, or you can run something a little bit more polished. Next slide. So we can provide links to music resources, as well as an app that we've used in the past to provide demo tracks for singers, which makes it really easy for people to learn how to sing. Even if you've got no musical ability, you could listen to this app, isolate your part and have a sing along and learn your part ready for choir. But I think the biggest buzz I get from choir sessions during the week, and like you might come to choir really tired, really worn out, and you go home buzzing, don't you, Emma? It's the natural endorphins that you get from singing, from dancing, from guitar, music. All these things are just God's natural way of building connection. And my favourite time at choir is not the singing, it's actually the supper time when we get around, have a coffee, someone brings their home-baked goods, and that's where community happens. And then we decide, okay, let's raise some money for the Red Shield Appeal. Let's do a social justice issue that we're passionate about. So the choir raised $2,300, partnering with the Salvo Big Band for a concert and an auction. So this is the way, I guess, these sort of stories, this is a practical example of how you might outwork. This was my embryo, but your embryo might look a little bit different. Next slide. We also have the free Stack Team app, which you've been using for the conference. It's a great way of creating community, as long as everybody turns off the notifications and we're not pinging Maddie at midnight with your photos. We've all learnt how to use that. Next slide. Yeah, so I think a critical part to running any sort of program is the pastoral care, isn't it? It's about relationship. It's about knowing your people without looking at their name tag, isn't it? It's about knowing what's happening in their week, taking an interest in them. And I think that's the power. Once you get within a trusting relationship, the faith pathways just happen. You don't even have to try. Once you've got that relationship and someone sees Jesus in you, they will want it. They will want it, and they will ask you. You don't have to force it. They will ask you. Next slide. And this slide just talks to that piece there about the pastoral care. And you don't want this to be your officer. At Marybeck, we've had about 11 officers in the time I've been there. You can't rely on the continuity of those leaders that can change. It's about us, the ministry of all believers, taking an interest in others. It's all about others, isn't it? Next slide. Yeah, so this is getting a little bit specific, but the Worship Arts Department, this is on offer for you. You've got a little pamphlet in your bag as well. If you want to have a look at this information, please reach out to me if you're interested or want more information as well. But we're here to help and assist you in doing mission. Next slide. Is that it? No? Again, we talked about the choir members. You might want to think about if you're leading a vocal group or a dance group, it might be a dance group, having someone that knows what they're doing is always helpful, but also having someone connected into your core already is also useful. So using the passions within your core already. If you've got an African drummer, I went to African drumming at Richmond Core and it was amazing playing rhythm with other people, and then the tempo would increase and we'd all move together. There was such a, and I'm not a percussionist, but oh my goodness, I had so much fun with these African guys. And and then we're improvising and it's almost become, I left that drumming class on a cloud, a high cloud. It was great. Next slide. Requirements. I like this word, requirements. We want to do things well when we do a program, right? We want to honour the safety of people involved. So these are things that you would all be familiar with: shared mission agreements, volunteer agreements. I know that's a hassle, but it's something we've got to do just to do things properly and to look after the people that we're trying to reach. Next. You can look at this as a sustainable model, and I think this is probably something we need to consider in contexts where people can afford to pay for a program like this. If you're from a context where that's just not your demographic, then of course we're going to look at partnering with communities to source funding, government, council money. But if you're in a context where people might pay or contribute to something, then I don't think it's a bad thing to ask for that. Next slide. The outcomes is really what it's about. And whatever your embryo might be, think about the mission intentions. What are the mission intentions? Creating faith pathways, caring for people, building healthy communities, and working for justice. 4 things. It's all about sharing the love of Jesus with our art form. So I'd encourage you over this weekend as we move into Sunday, think about those mission intentions. Think about how can my art, and Shaw was talking about this intermeshing of our art and our faith. There's a great book that we're giving out to all of our speakers. It was the video that we had at the dinner, the artist that actually was saved through his art. And his book is, what is it? The Art of Making, I think it's called. But we'll put it on the Stack Team app so you can look at it. It's a great short read, not too long, but it really talks about this theology of making, co-creating, and the invitation of the maker to co-create with him. What else have we got here? This is what happens when you are organising a conference. Your presentation doesn't really rate highly. We have some other tools there if you're in a vocal context for warming up and doing things safely. So we can actually resource you with these tools. It's just like a kit that you basically pull out of the bag and you can run with it. Next slide. What can your singers expect from a community singing program? These are some ideas that I've had. A highly engaging vocal tuition through weekly rehearsals, a safe space to explore group singing and build lasting friendships. So you really need to think about the people that you're attracting. How do we make that a safe space for them? How do we include people from different cultures? Maybe we need to think about our repertoire. How do we include people from different orientations, gender identities? Let's think about that stuff when we're trying to reach our communities. Emotional, pastoral and spiritual support. I think a lot of our community people are craving this at the moment, particularly those that are experiencing loneliness and isolation. Incremental improvement in their singing ability and their speaking as well. We find that's definitely a thing. When you're singing all the time, you definitely strengthen your voice. Performance opportunities to link with other activities within a local faith community. Think about your core and how you can include people, or your church. How can you include people in the other peripheral activities that you're running? Maybe you're running parachurch activities like Alpha program. Things like that that are low cost, low sort of effort for them to engage in. Regular communication, opportunities for solos and building their skills in that way. Increased self-esteem and mood, and opportunity to connect with local Christian faith community. What have we got next? Beautiful. I just got the 1 minute mark. So that's where we're sitting there. If there's one question, or if anyone's got any ideas of how this might work in your context. Sure, Bethany.
I'll be as quick as I can. I love it. I think it also doesn't have to be as big as your choir that's developed for 8 years, and I think actually just getting a group of people get together, it doesn't have to be a high calibre, does it? It can just be a group of average Joes that want to come and share together and have a sing. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not reinventing something that someone else is doing. And we're going to hear about another context in the UK, which is in an elderly context. And it's not even about performance. It's about just singing together and memory. We're going to look at that later. Yep.
Hey, Joyce, just a quick one. Thinking about something, I guess, as a singular event at this particular point in time for Christmas, and the creation of a community choir invitation for us. How does, maybe this is not the right time, there might be another time during the weekend, the rest of the weekend to see it, but what are the requirements and the obligations around safe solos and working with kids checks to have a choir come in for just even Christmas at this point?
I think Christmas is a great opportunity to engage a community, because people, if they're going to sing anything that has a Christian flavour, Christmas is a great one, because everyone's happy to be singing carols. Around the, we'll have to have a hard stop, but let me get back to you about the volunteers thing. If you're a leader, you need to have volunteer status. If you're working with children, the best people to speak to is the safeguarding team. And they will give you the very highest level of standard that you need to achieve. But yeah, they are looking at that process as well. Yeah, they are looking at the process for onboarding of volunteers, but we just encourage everybody that's participating in a program, just get onboarded as a volunteer. It's not a big hard process.